Rivers of Blood was the face of Elden Ring. Stuck on gargoyles? Rivers had your back. Struggling with Godskin Duo? The answer was Rivers of Blood. Malenia's impossible? You guessed it. Rivers of Blood. But that era did not last. After some major nerfs, everyone seemed to write it off as useless. Is it actually that bad? Rivers of Blood is still one of the best, but is there an alternative that outclasses it with a similar feel? Stick around because by the end of this video, you might be dusting it off or finding a new weapon that has that same feel of Rivers of Blood. Let's dive in. Today, we are diving into one of Elden Ring's most infamous weapons, Rivers of Blood. Even after multiple nerfs, it is still a force to be reckoned with, especially in bleed builds. Its damage is split into 62% physical and 38% fire. 53% of its damage comes from dexterity, 35% from arcane, and a modest 10% from strength. The standout feature of Rivers of Blood is its ability to trigger bleed quickly. Yet, in terms of bleed buildup, it only ranks 5th among katanas. On paper, the Blood Nagakiba has a higher bleed buildup and seems to outshine Rivers of Blood. But here's the twist. When used side by side, Rivers of Blood can proc bleed at the same time as the Nagakiba. Why? The answer lies in its skill. Corpse Piler. Corpse Piler is a multi-hit attack divided into 3 parts. The first hit deals 27% of the total damage, the second hit 39%, and the final hit 33% without the bleed damage. This skill adds additional bleed buildup with every hit, making Rivers of Blood arguably the top katana in its class in terms of bleed buildup. This skill can be used in 2 distinct ways. Up close, you'll benefit from both physical and fire damage. From a distance, however, it deals only fire damage, resulting in less damage but offering a safer playstyle. So how does Rivers of Blood compare to other bleed setups? To answer that, we'll need to examine similar options and see if anything rivals or surpasses its damage. Let's set things up. We are using maxed out weapons, optimized stats, and multiple buffs. We are looking for the best time to kill on Divine Beast Dancing Lion. The results? Let's take a look. Some SHREDS are simply out of the question. Blood Tax and Bloody Slash on the Nagakiba take far too long to defeat Divine Beast even with the same buffs. Bloodblade comes really close, offering much better range for safety, but still, we're looking for the best. The answer we have been looking for is the double slash SHREDS on a Keen Nagakiba. It feels like Rivers of Blood since it has almost the same moveset, it has the same bleed buildup, and unlike Rivers, it can be buffed with Blood Flame Blade for even more fire damage and bleed buildup. So which one of them comes on top? Let us compare. Rivers of Blood takes down Divine Beast in 5.20 seconds, while the Nagakiba takes down Divine Beast in 6.17 seconds. Despite the strong performance of Double Slash, Rivers of Blood still delivers the fastest TTK. So is Rivers of Blood the top option? Absolutely. It nukes bosses way faster, has a safety spam option for less damage if you need to, and a lot of potential with the DLC. We have the Bloodsucking tier, the Ansbach set, the Rakshasa set, and the Sacred Bloody Flesh, all of which make bleed builds insanely strong and work with Rivers of Blood. Before we build into the weapon, an important question needs to be answered. How do buffs interact with Rivers of Blood and which ones are worth using? The Fire Scorpion Charm gives a 6% damage increase. It is worth using, but only if you want to squeeze more damage. Flame Grant Me Strength gives a 20% damage increase, since it contributes to both its physical and fire damage scaling. Flame Shrouding Crack tier gives a 10% damage increase. Not the 20%, but it's worth using in my opinion. Shroud of Alexander gives a 15% damage increase and works as intended. Rotten Windsword Insignia easily stacks up to 13%, also worth using. The Ansbach set gives a 14% damage increase, but you really have bad poison resistances. Not the best option in my opinion. Now let's go over this ultimate Rivers of Blood build step by step, crafting it for maximum impact in both power and survivability. Our build today boosts its damage by over 170%, making it lethal yet safe and easy to use. I used it in the DLC and it was shredding left and right. First up is the main weapon. the infamous Rivers of Blood. To get the most out of it, take this blade all the way to +10. To complement Rivers of Blood, you will want a finger seal in your offhand, specifically to cast essential buffs. You won't need to two-hand the sword as it provides no added benefit. This way, you can easily reapply your buffs mid-battle without missing a beat. For the armor, let's start at the top with the Wise Man's Mask, which grants a 5% boost in damage. For the chest, arms, and legs, go with the Armor of Solitude, Gauntlets of Solitude, and the Greaves of Solitude. This heavy setup doesn't just look great with the mask, it's optimized for the build. The added damage negation and high poise allows you to trade blows and casting Corpse Piler uninterrupted. And that extra stamina provided by a heavier set is essential for spamming your skill without running dry. Now, if you would rather avoid sinking points into endurance, consider the Veteran set. It's lighter, but still keeps you well protected. Next up, the talismans that really push this build to the next level. Shard of Alexander boosts your skill damage by 15%, essential for maximizing Corpse Piler's potential. Rotten Wind Sword Insignia amplifies damage on successive hits with buffs of 6, 8, and a maximum of 13%. Lord of Blood's Exaltation increases attack power by 20% when nearby blood loss occurs. A perfect match for Rivers of Blood. Lastly, there is the Bull Goat Talisman, boosting your poise by 33%, perfect for reaching 101 poise to avoid interruptions. If you need a little bit of extra damage negation, swap one of these out for the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman against tougher bosses or the right element depending on the boss. In your Wondrous Physic Flask, start with the Thorny Crack tier, which boosts damage from successive hits by up to 20%. Combine it with the Flame Shrouding Crack tier for a solid 10% fire damage increase over 3 minutes. You can swap the latter depending on your needs, but this combination reliably powers up Rivers of Blood. To further enhance damage, especially against bosses, there are 2 spells you'll want in your toolkit. Golden Vow boosts damage by 15% and adds a 10% damage negation, lasting 60 seconds. And the Flame grant me Strength for an additional 20% damage over 30 seconds. The 30-second window is short, just reapply it from time to time mid-battle. An honorable mention is the Sacred Bloody Flesh. It boosts Arcane by 10, grants a 7% increase to physical attack, and adds another 18% physical attack buff after triggering blood loss. While it's powerful, it requires a bit of farming to gather the materials. It's higher than Flame grant me Strength, but it's annoying to get and you need to keep refreshing to keep up the buff. So I would just use Flame grant me Strength. For the attributes, aim for 50 Vigor for added tankiness, though if you're comfortable, you can lower it a bit more. 20 Mind to keep spamming the skill without needing to refill constantly. 40 Endurance for medium rolls with a full set of armor, and that extra stamina much needed for spamming the skill. 12 Strength just to meet the minimum requirement for Rivers. 25 Faith to be able to cast our buffs. 40 to 60 Dexterity and Arcane to round out the damage. Finally, for that extra edge, use Malenia's Great Rune if you have it. It restores HP on hits, which fits perfectly with Rivers of Blood's playstyle. Activate it when you're in for an extended fight, and it'll keep you in the action longer. With these setup choices, Rivers of Blood transforms into a lethal, unstoppable force. Whether you're new to this weapon or a returning fan, this build can keep up with anything Elden Ring throws at you. Rivers of Blood is back, and it's still an absolute beast in PvE. After testing it against some of the most powerful bleed setups, it's clear that this weapon isn't just surviving the nerfs, it's thriving. Try this build out, see what it can do, and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear about your experiences with it. If you want to see another weapon breakdown around the #1 weapon in damage in Elden Ring, check this video out.